Chapter 811. Are you hurting? I am sorry. Ji Yushan said, Little Che, is your body all right? He walked over. Behind him, Yun Luo wore a fitting dress with little lace petals sewn in with transparent threads. She looked very graceful yet elegant. Yun Luo saw Lin Che and Ji Jingze. She smiled at Lin Che. Lin Che, hello, we meet again. I was just visiting grandfather and it was a coincidence to meet you here. Right, what a coincidence. Lin Che looked at Ji Yushan. Initially, she wanted to properly speak to him, but she retracted her initial words. She just followed along and smiled. Grandfather, I am in good health. I am sorry that you had to worry about me. Ji Yushan then lowered his head and saw Ji Yushinian. When he saw this child, he thought he was seeing a younger Jingze. Actually, Ji Yushan asked someone to go over to secretly take photographs of him and let him see those secretly taken photos. Not much could be told from the photos as he did not look exactly like Jingze. But now that he was in front of him, that feeling was very similar to Ji Jingze. He liked Jingze from when he was young, so he decided on his heir status when he was 3. He liked him more than Ji Jingming and more than Ji Jingyu. Now, he had the same feelings about this child. Although Ji Jingze was disobedient, he did not disappoint him. The truth was, he had a good eye. He could tell since Ji Jingze was young that this child would have a bright future. Now, looking at Ji Yushinian, he had the same feelings. This child would have a bright future, not any worse than his father. Of course, he felt remorse about his actions towards his great-grandson, but he had no choice back then. In retrospect, if he went back to that time, he would have probably done the same thing. Furthermore, knowing how Ji Jingze would have counterattacked with such intensity, his actions might have been even more severe. But that was him as the head of a family. What he had to do for the family was something he had extremely regretted as a grandfather. He was such an adorable child. He also wanted to be his great-grandfather and watch him show filial respect. He said, Child, Nianian, good, the same as young Jingze. Little Che, you gave birth to a good son. Lin Che had such good luck. She met such a good man like Jingze whom wholeheartedly supported her. Now, the child she gave birth to was obviously different from the rest. In the future, he would definitely protect his mother and watch her live a healthy long life. Ji Yushan had to give in. However, Ji Yushan glanced sideways to Judge Yun Luo who was behind him. He smiled and said, Yun Luo here would not interrupt us. As she was here as a guest, we can continue having our dinner. Lin Che thought, right. There were no disruptions whatsoever, just that Ji Yushan wanted to be a matchmaker and make Yun Luo more clingy to Ji Jingze. Although Ji Yushan was not the head of the family anymore, it was still his house. So what if he wanted to invite one of 2 people to his house? No one could argue against that. Who one could shoo Yun Luo away? Looking at Lin Che at the side, Ji Jingze spoke first, it's fine. Yun Luo is considered my friend too. If she wants to be your guest then she will be your guest. It's no big deal. As Ji Jingze spoke, he looked up and asked Mu Wanqing, Mother, it is time for dinner, right? Let's eat. I am hungry. Oh, yes, of course. At the table. Yun Luo sat there and stared at Lin Che and Ji Jingze. By the way Jingze, I got someone to help me get a tie from Paris this time. I always wanted to give it to you but I didn't have the chance to. While she spoke, she glanced at Lin Che who was at the side as if she was saying Lin Che was the one not giving her the chance. Who did she think she was? Give her a chance, humph. And give my man a tie. Was she not making things difficult for Lin Che in public? Lin Che peered at the tie. It was red with floral prints. How uncouth, humph. Ji Jingze said, I have a lot of these things at home. Don't bother next time. Yun Luo said, no trouble. It is no trouble at all. These are what I want to do. After all, you helped me so much. My heart problems still need your help, so count it as a gift of gratitude. Ji Jingze scanned the tie but did not receive it. Ji Yushan frowned. Jingze, Luo spent a lot of effort to give you, so just keep it. It is just a tie. Do you think Lin Che will be not happy about it? You are just friends with Yun Luo. The 2 of you don't have any special relationship. If you do this, it will seem like you two are purposely hiding something. Right, just take it. It's just a tie. Lin Che took a deep breath and spoke after looking at Gu Jingze. Gu Jingze looked at Lin Che and said, okay, since my wife said so. Thank you. Everyone at the table almost spit out their food. Even the maids at the side were equally shocked. This sentence really came out of Gu Jingze's mouth. Gu Jingze had always been a prideful person. He never showed any weakness and said an unnecessary word to anyone. Since when did he learn to beat around the bush? Lin Che looked at Gu Jingze. What was he saying? And in front of so many people. Lin Che looked at how everyone's mouths were so wide that flies would have had no problem entering. She kicked Gu Jingze's leg under the table hard. Could he not make other people dislike her for nothing? Yun Luo had already stopped talking. She silently ate, bowing her head like an angry little wife. This meal was a little uncomfortable. After dinner, Lin Che quickly rinsed her mouth and left. After she returned, everyone returned to what they were doing initially. Lin Che saw from the external window that Gu Jingze was in the waiting room. She saw the tie Yun Luo gave on the table at the front. She felt very angry. Great, he really took it. She walked in, full of rage. She looked at Gu Jingze with narrowed eyes like a cat, full of anger. Gu Jingze. She put her hands on her hips and stood there as if she was going to punish him for a crime. Gu Jingze said, nice timing. Come here. There are fruits here. Having fruits after dinner is good for your digestion. Oh, so you also know I have indigestion today. Lin Che walked over, her expression full of resentment. Oh, Gu Jingze raised his head and looked at her, really thinking that she had indigestion. What happened to you? Lin Che slapped away his hand and said, take your gift from Sister Yun and go away. Don't touch me. An uncouth person like me cannot compare to a fresh beauty like your Sister Yun. Gu Jingze froze and then a bright smile appeared on his face. He squeezed her pouting mouth. Your jealous face is weirdly exquisite. As her mouth was in his hands, she flattened her mouth like a duck and scoffed. Ah, painful. Gu Jingze quickly released his hands after hearing that. He quickly looked down at Lin Che's mouth, face full of horror and frustration. Did I use too much force? Sorry, let me take a look. Where is it painful? Chapter 812. Only she can tease him. Actually, Lin Che was not in much pain since it was just a squeeze. No matter how strong he was, it would have been fine. She said that on purpose. But looking at the concerned and terrified look on Gu Jingze's face, she felt much better. She knew he was good to her in her heart. Everything was not his fault. She purposely pouted and said, Humph, now, you have Sister Yun. You don't know how to treat me tenderly anymore. Gu Jingze really thought he had hurt her. He knew he was strong and might not have controlled his strength properly, so he quickly lowered his head and checked her small lips carefully. Her red lips were shining like a jelly, smooth and reflective of the light. What a lovely mouth indeed. He thought regretfully, he should be more careful next time. This woman was so fragile, her skin was easily broken, her body was tender, and her mouth also hurt easily. He thought she was so fragile. He did not know how to treat her well. How can that be possible? How could I hurt you on purpose? I didn't do it on purpose. How does it hurt? Do you want to apply some medicine? Is inside broken? His face was full of anxiety, brows deeply knitted together as if he wanted to pry open her mouth to check but did not dare to touch her. Finally, Lin Che could not maintain her straight face anymore after seeing Gu Jingze's expression. She burst into laughter. She jumped and told Gu Jingze, I'm just joking, you idiot. I am not made of paper. How can I break just by a light squeeze? You are so gullible, how can you still laugh at me with your IQ? Huh, now I can say that if you can become the boss of Gu family, shouldn't I be the president of the United Nations? Gu Jingze's face darkened. Great, this Lin Che even dared to play tricks with everyone. Gu Jingze knew that he was being tricked. He looked at Lin Che and narrowed his eyes like an eager, darkly staring at Lin Che's laughing face. Only she would dare to play tricks on him. Only she would dare to accuse him of doing wrong things. He looked at this little woman, scoffed, and jumped right over the sofa and at her. Upon seeing Gu Jingze chase over, Lin Che immediately took the cushion on the sofa to hit him. Ah, Gu Jingze, what are you doing? What do you think I am doing? Come back and see how I punish you. Oh no, is this domestic abuse? Lin Che ran around the table and threw whatever she picked up at him. Naturally, she did not dare to pick up any sharp and hard objects. She picked up mainly things like tissue boxes and packaging bags. Gu Jingze avoided all of them with ease, relentlessly chasing after Lin Che. Lin Che saw Gu Jingze was catching up, so she shouted in fear, "Oh no, Gu Jingze, are you serious? If you come over, I am going to scream." Gu Jingze snorted, "Of course, I am serious. If you know any better, you will come here obediently. If not, once I catch you, watch how I will hit your butt." "Bah, you already said you are going to hit me. I am not that stupid to still go over to get hit." Lin Che continued running. After going a few rounds, there were not a lot of places to hide and not many things to throw. She looked at the door and sprinted in that direction. However, just as she opened a crack in the door, his hand had already reached from behind and closed the little gap in the door. His hand did not pull back but instead placed his body closer to Lin Che's direction. Lin Che felt his strong masculine scent near her and she secretly thought, "Oh no, I could not escape this time." As expected, once she turned back, she saw his face close up. One of his hands held the door and trapped her here. The corner of his lips curled up in a wicked smile. His thin lips flickered up slightly. It seemed like his mood was lighter. "Run, do you still want to run?" Lin Che immediately shook her head. "Run, run where? She could not escape." He said, "Come hit me. Do you still want to hit me?" Lin Che immediately shook her head again. No more hitting and she could not win him even if she did. Gu Jingze said, "You still dare to play tricks with me? See how I will." He carried her in one swoop. "Ah, Gu Jingze, put me down. What do you want to do?" Lin Che screamed. "What am I doing? What did I say? I'm gonna hit your butt," he said, voice light with joy. Lin Che's face darkened gloomily. Was he really going to hit? But she forgot that Gu Jingze was a man of his words. He placed her on his legs in one swoop with one hand facing her butt and hit her down with a smack. "I see you grew bold enough to even hit and throw things at me. Do you still dare to do so?" Gu Jingze said while hitting. "No, I don't dare to anymore." Lin Che felt like crying. She was already this age and her child was already so big. She even hit Nianian's butt every day, but to get her butt hit by Gu Jingze today, are you kidding me? However, during this time, she did not know her scream was too realistic and shrill that. The door was immediately pushed open from outside. When Yun Luo stood at the door and saw the scene inside, she got a shock. "Hear what happened here?" Yun Luo saw Gu Jingze gripping onto Lin Che and broken pieces strewn all over the floor. It looked like the place just experienced a disaster. The place was in a mess. What was even more shocking was naturally the couple. "What are you doing?" Gu Jingze paused. His relaxed and passionate expression suddenly became cold like a window that just got blown by the air conditioner. He put Lin Che down and let her stand next to him. After the fuss, Lin Che's hair was messy and her face was red like she just exercised. There was still sweat clinging to her hair, but it did not seem ugly at all. In fact, she looked very healthy. Gu Jingze was looking at Yun Luo. "Oh, we just kicked up a fuss for fun." Yun Luo looked at the duo. She saw Gu Jingze raise his hand to sweep the strands of hair on Lin Che's forehead away and tapped her head with a smile. "She tricked me just now, so I had to return the favor." Lin Che felt pain from the tap and scrunched his nose threateningly. What do you mean I tricked you? How did you not trick me? Aren't you the one that is too dumb? Great, Lin Che, you say that again. Yun Luo's heart skipped. Lin Che even dared to speak to Gu Jingze like that, not to mention play tricks on him. She suddenly felt envious of Lin Che. Gu Jingze could actually treat a woman like that. Gu Jingze looked at Lin Che with doting gentleness as if he was looking at his mischievous daughter, full of love. It seemed like regardless of what Lin Che would do, he would never be angry. Even if he looked angry, he was definitely pretending. Chapter 813. This man who kisses is too handsome. A man like this looked so warm. It fitted Gu Jingze's well-defined features. A cold man originally was more heartwarming when he showed warmth in front of a woman. She really longed for a Gu Jingze like that. She really did. She really hoped Gu Jingze would treat her like that too, even if it was only for a day. However, Gu Jingze only had eyes on Lin Che. After a while, he seemed to have realized that Yun Luo was still at the side looking. He smiled and said, "Sorry for letting you see this. We are not usually like this, but she is a little playful today." However, he did not show a single trace of embarrassment on his face. He had a prideful grin like he was looking at his child. No matter what the child did, his parents would find it cute. So no matter what Lin Che did, in Gu Jingze's eyes, it was something to be proud of. Yun Luo thought of what her father had told her earlier. Father said, Gu Shand would help her, so she didn't have to be afraid. In the future, Gu Jingze would still be hers. The Yun family had paved the way for Yun Luo to walk down and become the young madam of the Gu family. So she must tolerate, work hard, and improve. She could not run away selfishly anymore. She looked at Gu Jingze and Lin Che. Nothing, I thought something happened. She would never have thought that it was Lin Che that made a mess in the waiting room, but Gu Jingze did not care about it at all and even played along. Looking at the mess, Yun Luo thought, this Lin Che was so spoiled that she even dared to make a fuss in the Gu family mansion and made such a mess in the waiting room. Gu Jingze saw how she seemed to have no intention of leaving. He smiled and said, "Please don't laugh at us." Yun Luo even smiled and said, "Of course not. Aren't we friends? I feel happy to see you two happy." Lin Che's jaw was threatening to fall. What game were they playing? Pretending to a good friend. Her emotions were written on her face. But it seemed like she was going to cling here and pretend to be a good friend. This made Lin Che feel sick. Compared to those prideful rich young ladies, this sort of shamelessness of the pretentious was even more infuriating. That obedient look, what was she trying to show? Gu Jingze looked at her coolly, his gaze calculative. Afterward, he discreetly raised his brow. Okay, actually that was nothing. It was just a little fun between a husband and wife. You don't have to care about us. Yun Luo smiled dryly. Yes, I know. Oh right, grandfather invited me to stay over tonight. I live right next to you. When we are free at night, we can chat and appreciate red wine. She was even going to stay overnight. Lin Che felt even more shocked. This woman was way more shameless than she imagined. Lin Che awkwardly squeezed out a smile. Gu Jingze also smiled. He looked down at Lin Che. You don't like to drink red wine, right? Lin Che's eyes widened. What did he mean by that? He liked drinking red wine, so he was going for wine appreciation. Looking at Lin Che's angry glare, he laughed. His thin fingers tipped her chin up, narrowing his eyes. I don't like to drink it. I like the wine you make. Lin Che said in a daze, I don't know how to make wine. Don't you have one right here? More intoxicating than any alcohol. His lips inched closer and he lowered his lids with long eyelashes. Those thin and thick eyelashes covered half of his cloudy eyes, making his dark iris seem more intoxicated. It was as if the sweetness in her mouth was an exquisite wine. His lips touched hers and never left. Instead, he stuck his tongue out and explored the fragrance in his mouth. Lin Che instantly went blank. She glanced sideways at Yun Luo, whose face was red. She seemed to not have thought that Gu Jingze would start making out with Lin Che right in front of her. It was not only Yun Luo. In fact, Lin Che also did not expect it at all. However, his tongue swirled on the tip of her tongue. With that skilled technique and his detailed expression, her soul was sucked away instantly. She immediately sank into his passionate kiss. This was Yun Luo's first time seeing such a beautiful kissing position. It was her first time seeing Gu Jingze so passionate. He was just like an arrogant king passionately kissing the beauty in his arms while hugging her and instantly taking away her all. That look was so masculine. Yun Luo looked at those red lips. She felt that Gu Jingze's lips must be very soft. His kiss must be mesmerizing. That was why Lin Che's expression was also lost in an instant. Yun Luo's throat felt dry watching them. She uncontrollably thought, if she was the one kissed by him. But that was Lin Che. Gu Jingze licked Lin Che's lips lightly before releasing her. He turned his head and told Yun Luo coolly, "Okay, good night. We are going back to our room." They were staying overnight as usual. Whenever they had dinner here, they would basically stay over. Originally, they were considering going back. But Gu Jingze decided that he was not going to mention past matters suddenly. He directly brought her to the room, already decided to stay for one night. Lin Che's lips were still tender. After entering, she saw Gu Jingze remove his jacket. She heard noises outside. She was not sure if Yun Luo was really going to stay here in the night, but she could not see her in the room anyway. However, when Lin Che just turned her head, she saw Gu Jingze lean over after removing his jacket. Lin Che froze, seeing how he had already unbuttoned 2 buttons on his shirt. His honey-colored skin could vaguely be seen. He tugged at his clothes messily and looked at Lin Che. "I have not finished punishing you. You don't think it would be done with just a few smacks on the butt?" Still not done? How could he be so vengeful? Lin Che immediately pleaded. "Gu Jingze, don't do this. You are so handsome and clever like no one else in history and no one will ever be. Big boss, why are you still so stingy with a woman like me?" Gu Jingze snorted. This little fence-sitter, this combination of a woman and a bad guy, let him feel more helpless about her. Gu Jingze scoffed and leaned closer. He nudged against her body and held her head. She could just see the muscles behind his white shirt. From the collar, the muscles were by packs. Even if they were relaxed, it was extremely well defined. Her mouth felt dry. Lin Che smelled the sweat from his body and felt her mouth dry up even more. Damn it. His body was so tempting that she felt sorry for herself for not touching it. Chapter 814. I said I would hold you to account today. Gu Jingze appeared cold, but he was simply that kind of charismatic man on the inside. How so? He always looked at you with a straight face, but his body was already rising uncontrollably. He casually drew close, slowly leaning in. With his enchanting figure, he seduced her heart. His lips grazed past her face as he looked at her this close up. Every time he touched her skin, he seduced her even more. She looked into his eyes. Actually, his eyes were really very charming. His eyelashes were amazingly thick and full. Thinking about it, Nianian had inherited this trait from him. Those fan-like lashes covered his deep eyes. Normally, those eyes reminded one of a thunderstorm, ruthless and formidable. They looked so cold that nobody dared to go close to him. Outsiders definitely did not know that those eyes looked even more incredibly enchanting when he was passionate. His long brows were fierce, but today, they looked much gentler under the soft lighting. Her eyes fell to his lips. Those defined lips were tainted with the laziness of the night like a water lily that just woke up. It was beautiful, noble, and had a hint of charm. That perfect image made her want to lunge at him. He was right in front of her, filled with enchantment. Lin Che thought and thought until her face grew uncontrollably hot. She was being too perverted. He smiled as he looked at her reddened face. This woman simply could not hide her thoughts at all, especially when it was only him around. Her eyes were already expressing all her desires. When she looked at him, it was as if she wanted to eat him up. Meanwhile, he also felt that this was too fatal. Being stared at by her like this, he felt as if he was really going to become food. He wanted to voluntarily offer himself right into her mouth. However, he was patient. He leaned close to her body leisurely. At the same time, he breathed beside her ear. "Nobody will disturb us tonight," he said. "What we don't need to fear anyone disturbing us." She stopped his face with one hand. Embarrassment was written all over her flushed face. She looked in horror as he put her hand down again. She exclaimed, "No, Gu Jingze. No, no, you." He immediately wanted to play so violently. She could not take it. She shook her head. No, no, no. She really could not. She thought that she was going to die. "This is only the beginning. I said that I would hold you accountable today, right? I'll see how you dare to do that to me again." After screaming, again and again, Lin Che felt as if she fell in the water and then jumped into a whirlpool several times over. She thought that not even roller coasters were this exciting. When everything ended, she really did not have an ounce of strength. However, looking at the man in front of her intertwined with the shadows, she thought about his gentleness towards her. She thought about his forcefulness, his tender affection, and his ruthlessness. She liked every part of it. Including everything that he did today. She liked it all so much. The more she looked at him with sleepy eyes, the more she wanted to always be with him. She wanted it to go on forever. Chapter 815. Such a loud sound, of course, it was heard. He carried her into the bathroom. She was limp as she felt him wash every inch of her body. He shook his head and looked at her. Your body now is really impossible. Lin Che glared angrily at him. Whose body could withstand his torture? She raised a leg, wanting to kick him, but he grabbed hold of it. Her small, wet leg had not been tried. The water droplets on it made her leg look exquisite. Because she was an artist, every detail her body could be pinpointed by others. Thus, even her toes were groomed beautifully. They were tender and fair like lotus root. He grabbed her leg tightly, lowered his head, and put a toe in his mouth. She was so shocked that she immediately tried to withdraw her leg. He licked her, smiled, and said, "Do it again." Idiot. She glared at him. Don't you despise dirtiness? He smiled and looked at her. His bright eyes were filled with fearless emotions. He looked at her like a precious jewel. I like every part of your body. I like every single cell of you. I won't dislike any part of you. I'm dead. I'm dead. I'm dead. Lin Che felt the little bit of strength she just gained get washed away again. She was so soft that she couldn't lift herself. Gu Jingze looked at her flushed body filled with traces of himself. It immediately excited him again. He stopped washing her. Then, he carried her up and headed out again. Gu Jingze, what are you doing? I'll go slow this time, really. No, I don't want it. It's fine, you just need to lie down and not do anything. What? He only stopped for good when Lin Che almost wanted to faint. Gu Jingze looked at her and kissed her gently. Although it dampened his spirits, he could not bear to see her so tired. The couple hugged each other to sleep. Meanwhile, someone outside could not sleep the whole night. Although sound insulation was great here, young Luo insisted on taking the room beside theirs. In the end, she could hear what went on next door with her windows opened. It was also because the sounds were too loud next door. This went on for a few hours with some pauses in between. Although she was inexperienced, she was not a little girl. The technology was so advanced now, so there was no way she wouldn't know. Thus, she could identify the sounds of joy and pleasure. She knew that Lin Che's exclamations were not because she felt uncomfortable but because Gu Jingze was too good. She had no idea that such a cold person like Gu Jingze would turn out to be so passionate and tireless in bed. Furthermore, he was so energetic. Hearing the sounds of excitement, young Luo's heart was filled with pain. She even jealously wondered why it wasn't her. She also wanted Gu Jingze to be this passionate with her. She wanted to experience this strong man. She listened until her ears turned red. She felt especially shy and unable to withstand it. However, because that was Gu Jingze and the man in her countless dreams, she could not resist. However, these were only illusions. She waited for the sounds to stop completely, but she still was not able to sleep. Her eyes were open until it was daylight. She was determined. One day, this strong man would be hers. One day, Gu Jingze would be this passionate towards her. Good things were worth waiting for. That was what her father told her. Because Lin Che was too tired from last night, she slept for a long time. When she woke up groggily, she saw the man beside her sleeping soundly. Although it was so tiring last night, he still looked relaxed. He still looked so handsome in his sleep. His body had traces of what happened last night. They were traces that she left on him, bite marks that she could not resist leaving on him. Looking at them now, she realized how crazy she must have been. However, if he didn't want it, she wouldn't have been this crazy. The pure white quilt covered half of him, revealing the other half of his naked body. Her eyes scanned across his cheeks and that extraordinarily handsome face. Every inch of it could not escape her eyes. The more she looked, the more good-looking she found him. It was also thanks to him that she had an equally handsome child who was exactly like him in looks and demeanor. And this man belonged to her. Only she had his gentleness and his roughness. Only she could touch this perfect body. In this instant, she really wanted to selfishly own all of him and not leave a single bit of him to anyone else. Suddenly, she was also happy that this body could not be touched by any other woman. If they could, this illness actually didn't need to be treated. However, there were still risks. She quickly dismissed this thought. Although it was a perfect ideal, his life was more important than anything else. Just as Lin Che was wandering in her thoughts, Gu Jingze opened his eyes. Seeing her prop her head as she laid beside him, he wondered what she was thinking about. He reached out and put an arm around her. What are you thinking about? You look deep in thought. Lin Che said, it's nothing. Let me see the time. She glanced at her phone and was shocked. It was already noon. She hastily jumped out of bed. However, her body was frozen with pain. She yelped and sat back down on the bed as her hand went straight to below. Gu Jingze immediately noticed this. He frowned and looked at her. What's wrong? Lin Che blushed and tried to hide it. Nothing, nothing. Gu Jingze frowned and stopped her from moving. Let me see. She had no choice. He lifted her nightgown and took a look. He felt annoyed with himself and wanted to beat himself up. He already tried his best to be careful and not use too much strength last night. He tried his best to wait until she was ready. However, he still hurt her. She already had a child and it was a natural birth. However, her body was still as tight as a virgin's. Of course, it could probably be because he was too big, but he honestly heard that a woman would loosen up after giving birth. He thought that it would be better and it wouldn't be so bad like last time. However, he now realized that it was far from the case. He still needed to be careful. Chapter 8:16. An unyielding man's tender love. He had not done it for a long time, so he relaxed a little. As a result, her body suffered this much. Now, his heart truly ached. As he looked at her, he said, I'm sorry. Never mind. She quickly stopped him as she turned away bashfully. She did not dare to look at him as her ears grew hot and her hands fidgeted. She tried to suppress her palpitating heart. You didn't do it on purpose. He said, but I shouldn't have used so much strength anyway. I should have been able to control myself. It's all my fault. It's all right. I said I'm fine. I just need to apply some medication, she replied. Okay, wait a second. I'll go get it. Hey, he had already stood up to get the medicine. After a while, he returned and made Lin Che sit properly. Lin Che was on the verge of crying. I can do it myself. He waited for her as if asking, are you sure you can? The answer was obviously not. Thus, she had no choice but to continue keeping her legs spread apart. She sat there embarrassingly while letting him apply medication onto her. Thankfully, it did not take long. It was cooling and it made her feel much better. When the couple walked out, the maids all greeted them respectfully. When they sat down, Mu Wanqing was also there. Ji Yushinian had already been sent to preschool. Mu Wanqing said, Nianian was still asking if he doesn't have to go to the playground in the afternoon. No, he must go. Lin Che immediately replied sharply. Mu Wanqing chuckled and said, he's just like Jing's when he was little. He did not like playing the same way the other kids played. Gu Jingze glanced at Mu Wanqing and then at Lin Che. He was helpless. Mu Wanqing did not force him to go at that time. In the end, he escaped his mother, but he did not escape. Just then, Yun Luo also came down. You're all up. Yun Luo greeted them warmly. Mu Wanqing asked, were you playing chess with Grandpa until now? Yun Luo smiled and said, yes. Old people need company and I had nothing to do. She sat down and then glanced at Lin Che across her. The marks on her neck were extremely obvious. Needless to say, those were love bites left by Gu Jingze. She instantly felt her heart tighten. She bit her lip and remained silent as she started eating. When Yun Luo returned home, she ran straight into her room. Yun Kuoshan saw this and quickly walked in to see Yun Luo sprawled across her bed, crying. He walked over to her, all right, just see how useless you look. Yun Luo looked up. Dad, I think I really don't have a single place in Jingze's heart. Luo, I have already done my best so that you can marry him. You must have patience. The old man had already promised me and he will absolutely stand on your side. You have nothing to fear. Yun Luo looked up. I think the old man is very smart. How can you be sure that he's not trying to ridicule me and make me give up? He wouldn't dare, Yun Kuoshan replied. I won't keep it from you. I have a little trump card that will force Ji Yushan to stand on my stand. Don't worry, he would not dare to not help us. What trump card? Yun Luo asked strangely. Yun Kuoshan grunted deeply. No wealthy family has not done a dirty deed. His family runs such a huge business. Of course, they have done things that can never be known to others. This is the one weak spot that Ji Yushan will have for the rest of his life. Unless he doesn't want his dignity anymore, he will have to help us. At Yu Minmin's side, she and Gu Jingming went to visit Fang Zongmu at his place. Naturally, Yin Suya was there too. However, since she was Fang Zongmu's girlfriend, she was very obedient at his house. Gu Jingming had known the Fang family for many years already. Upon his arrival, they were very polite but not surprised. Fang Zongmu saw Gu Jingming pull Yu Minmin along. He smiled and said, "Now, you really can't bear to part with her for 1 second." Gu Jingming did not flinch from that remark. He looked down gently at Yu Minmin and then said, "The two of us won't eat everything you have. What are you afraid of?" Fang Zongmu said, Fine, but I have to remind you. If just one Mr. President comes, then he only needs to bring one bodyguard. Now that you two are here, you bring 2 bodyguards. See, those guards outside don't eat very little too." Gu Jingming turned to look. He laughed and asked, "How can the Fang family be so petty? We won't come next time. Will that do?" Don't, I was just joking." Shu Yi said, "You can come to my house next time. We don't complain that you have too many people. Hee. We'll get reporters to interview you and take some pictures. How many people would be dying to pay for those? Zongmu doesn't know how to run a business at all." Fang Zongmu laughed, yes, only you do." Yu Minmin did not notice anything else. She only saw that Fang Zongmu's garden was very beautiful. She said, "There are so many plants here. You must spend a lot to maintain these." Fang Zongmu looked at Yu Minmin. "Madam seems very interested." Yu Minmin said, "Yes. I think glazed tile palace lacks a human touch. It would be better with some plants, right?" Fang Zongmu said, "Indeed. It's actually not difficult to maintain them either. You probably just need 2 gardeners." Gu Jingming looked at Yu Minmin. "Do you want to do that?" Yu Minmin turned to him. "Yes, I want to try." Gu Jingming replied, "Then we'll go pick some plants out later." Yu Minmin asked, "Can we really do that?" Gu Jingming said, "Of course. The glazed tile palace is also your home. You can do whatever you want." Yu Minmin said, "It's just that nobody talked about it, so I thought we couldn't." Nobody talked about it because everybody knew that Gu Jingming did not care about all these. Neither did he like plants. Gu Jingming said, "If you like it, we'll do it." "Ha, you make it sound like you're only doing it for me," Yu Minmin chuckled. Gu Jingming put an arm around her. "Of course, it is for you. Otherwise, it makes no difference to me." Yu Minmin asked, "You're making such huge sacrifices for me?" "Well, that's because you're my wife." Fang Zongmu and Shu Yi looked at each other and then at Yin Suya behind. Yin Suya did not make a sound. For a long time, she had stopped talking a lot, especially in front of Gu Jingming. Actually, Fang Zongmu and Shu Yi were also a little surprised when they saw how Gu Jingming treated Yu Minmin. This man who never showed emotions could actually behave this way now. Perhaps it was normal when it came to other couples, but with Gu Jingming, it was surprising and amazing. The more unyielding a man was, the more intense his tender love appeared to be. Chapter 817. Mr. President gets along so well with Madam President. From Fang Zongmu's house, Gu Jingming took Yu Minmin to a botany center where all kinds of flora grew. He wanted to let Yu Minmin pick some and have them delivered straight to Glazed Tile Palace. This place suddenly became busy because of the presidential couple's sudden visit. Gu Jingming said to the people, please be at ease. We are only here to see if there are nice plants that we can grow in glazed tile palace. Upon hearing that, they quickly took out the newest and best plants. They let Gu Jingming and Yu Minmin slowly take their pick in the large greenhouse behind. Yu Minmin asked, are we really going to plant them? It was merely a passing remark. You don't have to listen to me, really. Gu Jingming replied, you said that you wanted to do it, so we'll do it. Yu Minmin smiled again and looked at him. Everything I say goes. Naturally, he said, the wife has the final say for all matters of the home. Oh, matters of the home. But there are a few matters at home. If you want, even going to the toilet can become a national affair, Yu Minmin pouted. Gu Jingming said, ha, you're right. But at the same time, any national affair can also become a home affair if I wanted. Yu Minmin's eyes grew wide. The faint wrinkles at the corners of Gu Jingming's eyes made him look smarter and wiser. Yu Minmin replied, you'd have to want it, though. Gu Jingming said, but there's one thing that is definitely my most important. What? The madam's affairs. Yu Minmin felt as if her heart was melting. She realized one thing, were all the men in the Gu family the same? When they didn't want to be sweet, they were cold to the bone. When they wanted to be sweet, they'd practically throw people into honey. She never thought that after they were honest about their feelings with each other, he would be this sweet to her. It was as if a huge stone was lifted off his heart and he was able to become more open. His sweet talking was also smoother. Yu Minmin picked a few and looked at the whole place. She had never seen these plants before. She said, I must be a frog in a well. I can't recognize a single plant from here. Gu Jingming said, I don't know them either because these were all newly cultivated. Ah, really? Of course. This is the National Botany Center. All plants for national events come from here. Wow, then am I abusing authority by taking plants from here? Yu Minmin never expected to take plants from such an important place. Gu Jingming said, you said it yourself. If I wanted, even going to the toilet could be a national affair. Thus, buying flowers for my wife is also a national affair. Since it's a national affair, why can't I come here? Yu Minmin looked at Gu Jingming. Humph, so bossy. Gu Jingming asked, doesn't madam like this part about me? Yu Minmin scoffed, who said that I like it? Gu Jingming took her back home, saying that they would take the plants to glazed tile palace later. By evening, professionals had already redecorated the garden in glazed tile palace with new plants. When Yu Minmin went out to take a look, the plants were already in place. She looked at them and thought that they looked more beautiful than when she saw them at the Botany Center. With the experts' planning, the landscape was flawless and looked gorgeous. Yu Minmin looked at the flowers and immediately felt her mood lifted. She seemed to feel the joy of those women who received flowers because flowers could really make a person happy. Just then, Gu Jingming hugged Yu Minmin from behind. Does it look nice? Yu Minmin nodded vigorously. Yes, it does. Gu Jingming said, it's said that women like flowers. Sure enough, it's true. Yu Minmin said, it's said that women like receiving a bouquet from men. I don't remember receiving one from you despite our years of marriage. Gu Jingming replied, a bouquet has only dead flowers. There's no meaning in that. Today, I'm giving you a garden. Isn't it much more meaningful than those bouquets? Giving her a garden. It sounded really tyrannical. She said, if I were to take a picture now, post it online and say that I also receive flowers but mine are special. Won't other people be crazy jealous? That is a given, Gu Jingming licked her ear and said. First of all, taking a picture of the glazed tile palace's garden will let everyone know that the sender was me. No matter what kind of flowers you receive, they would all be crazy jealous. Please, narcissist, she looked up at his confident face. However, she actually thought the same thing too. He was the most popular Mr. President. So many girls adored him and his legion of fans was even bigger than those of movie stars. If those fans knew how well Gu Jingming treated a lady in private, they would definitely be jealous. At the thought of this, Yu Minmin's heart felt even sweeter. She turned around to hug him and she asked, why do I feel as if I found a gem? You only know it now but it's not too late. He tapped her nose lightly and said leisurely, since you know that I'm a gem, you'd better treat me well tonight. Don't avoid me with such an unwilling expression anymore. I have never, Yu Minmin protested. Never. You always looked at me with fear and would try to avoid me. Thinking about it, Gu Jingming really did not feel great. Which part of him was that scary? She was scared every time she saw him. Yu Minmin's face was filled with embarrassment. It was so obvious. However, she was indeed afraid of him, especially when he was bossy. He was so careless and he had a bad temper. He would flare up at the slightest thing. She said, don't flare up at me and I won't be afraid of you. Gu Jingming asked, I flared up at you? Yes, yes. You always have such a strict face. It's frightening, Yu Minmin said. Gu Jingming touched his own cheeks as he reflected on himself deeply. He looked at Yu Minmin. Okay, I promise you that I won't flare up at you. Yu Minmin really thought that he was much softer and nicer to her now. He was so nice to her that it made her feel giddy. It was as if she could get lost in his gentleness. Just then, a cabinet member arrived to discuss state affairs with Gu Jingming. He let Yu Minmin look around the garden while he went off to work. A maid came to bring water for Yu Minmin. She placed the tray down and said, Madam, Mr. President is really so good to you. We are dying of envy. Mr. President never smiled like that to anyone. Yu Minmin beamed. Really? Of course. We are truly shocked to see this side of Mr. President. However, we are also very happy for you that he treats you so well. Please bear a child for Mr. President soon. Glazed tile palace would become livelier. Yu Minmin held the cup and stared ahead. She wanted very much to, but she still could not figure out the problem with her body. Chapter 818, Charming Father and Son Duo. However, if she could, she wanted to bear a child for him now. He was getting old, after all. They needed a child to make this family look more like one. She used to think that having a child had no real benefits to her. After all, they were part of an act. However, it was different now. She believed that it was not easy for Gu Jingming and she should think about him. Since she already had a man that so many people wanted and she had already been with him for so many years, shouldn't she give a little something back? Furthermore, she wanted to have a child that looked like him. It would be best if it was a boy so that he could be charming and brave, and fight hard beside his father. Thinking about it, Yu Minmin made up her mind. She had to take care of her body and she needed to go to the hospital. She had to get herself checked if she could bear children. Lin Che and Gu Jingze went to pick up Nianian at the preschool. Then, they went to the amusement park. Gu Xinian asked, can I ask Union to come along? Gu Jingze looked at Nianian. Nianian, you must know how to advance and retreat when it comes to women. It's not good for your relationship if you're constantly together. Giving each other space once in a while will make your relationship stronger. Understood? Gu Xinian looked at Gu Jingze. I just don't want to go by myself. Lin Che crossed her arms. Gu Xinian, say that one more time. I'll go, Gu Xinian immediately said. It's Dad. He said that he doesn't want to do it, so he influenced me to go against you. Gu Jingze looked at him and his face darkened. He really knew how to push the blame. However, the three of them soon reached the amusement park. The family of three got out of the car. Lin Che went to buy the tickets. Not many people came to the amusement park in the afternoon. Most visitors came in the morning so that they could spend the whole day there. However, it was almost 2 in the afternoon and they just got here. The ticketing officer reminded her, we close at 8 p.m. on the dot so you'll only have a few hours left to play. Are you sure you still want to enter? Lin Che nodded. She did not care if it was worth it or not. She never had time to come here anyway, so it couldn't be helped that they came in the afternoon either. It was not easy for them to free up today. The staff looked at her strangely. However, when Gu Jingze brought their son and approached them, the staff's eyes immediately changed. She stared at the handsome man and then at the handsome child. Just from their faces, one could tell that they were father and son. She was instantly floored by this father and son duo. They were so cute, so handsome. Lin Che naturally noticed the staff's eyes. She wore a mask and a baseball cap, so she was not afraid of anyone recognizing her. As her eyes shifted under the cap, She looked at the staff's infatuated expression and was annoyed. The staff looked at her as if she was dirt just before, but now, the staff was so excited by the man behind. Humph, opposites attract. As revenge, Lin Che walked to Gu Jingze and put her hand on his waist. She clung onto him as they walked to the counter. Sure enough, the staff looked at the three of them and assumed that they were a family. She was indeed angry. The family's value looked high. How did this woman get so lucky to have such a handsome man who bore such a handsome child? She had too much love. Seeing as Lin Che held his hand of her own accord, Gu Jingze looked down at her. What are you doing? Lin Che said, I'm establishing my power. You see, if any woman around us looks over here, I want to let them know that this is my husband. Gu Jingze narrowed his eyes as he swept across the area. Then, he lowered his head and chuckled, all right, let me help you with that. Huh. He bent down and kissed her forcefully. Lin Che let out a sound and felt him let go. She then came around to her senses and understood what he was trying to do. Seriously. She blushed and felt people turning their heads to look at them. She could feel those eyes staring at her like daggers as if they were chiding her. She already had such a handsome husband and she was still showing off. She was really mean. Lin Che looked at those hateful stares. It was not her fault. It was Gu Jingze's fault. Meanwhile, at the side, Gu Xinian already narrowed his eyes speechlessly. His face clearly showed intolerance. He gazed at the two of them. I just knew that I shouldn't have come. It should have just been the two of you, but you insisted that I come. Lin Che crossed her arms at him to make him keep quiet. Gu Xinian sighed and used his little hand to touch his forehead. Lin Che asked, what's wrong? Is your head hot? Are you having a fever? Gu Xinian replied, no, I want to check if my temperature is high. What? For being a light bulb. Lin Che shot him a look and continued tugging Gu Jingze along. Many places had a queue and they only managed to sit 2 rides. Actually, it didn't matter what ride they took. As they strolled along, they also bought some food and drinks. Although Gu Xinian did not like the amusement park, looking at other kids with their parents and then at his own family made him proud. His father was actually more handsome than other fathers. Needless to say, his mother was an absolute beauty. As for himself, he believed that he was better than those immature kids. In that instant, he was glad that he was back. The feeling of a family was actually not bad. He looked up at Gu Jingze, then at himself, and then at others. He kind of wanted to be carried on his father's shoulders like the other children. However, he also thought that it was childish and he should not think that way. But he was still a child, after all. Also, he could not quite hide his expressions well. Lin Che noticed this, so she patted Gu Jingze and said, Nianian is tired. Why don't you carry him? Gu Jingze also saw the other men who were carrying their children. He chuckled and hoisted Gu Xinian up. Come on, I'll carry you. There is no need to. Gu Xinian's ears were red. His mouth said no, but he did not resist when Gu Jingze carried him up. Gu Jingze lifted him up effortlessly onto his shoulders. This scene was really charming. A handsome dad taking care of his adorable son. Although the adorable son had a sulky face, Lin Che still thought that it was very endearing. She quickly whipped out her phone and took a few photos sneakily. It was too charming. She wanted to show them off to the world but she could not. What a waste. Chapter 819. Lin Che, someone took a photo of you. As she looked at Gu Jingze walking with Gu Xinian in his arms, she truly felt more satisfied than she ever had. One was her husband and the other was her son. Both of them were hers. Humph, it was pointless no matter how much anyone envied her. Furthermore, they truly looked like they were in a painting. They made her feel as if she was looking at characters on the television. She herself was stunned, much less the passers-by around her. Their eyes were all drawn to the extremely good-looking father and son pair. However, never trouble until trouble troubles you. Someone suddenly noticed Lin Che. A voice suddenly said, Lin Che. Thereafter, people started looking at her in surprise as well. Lin Che seemed to hear someone shouting her name and immediately looked in front of her. Gu Jingze also stopped in his tracks and looked around at the person who had shouted. That person pointed at them and immediately ran towards them after shouting. Sensing the situation, the people around them also looked at them curiously. Lin Che was wearing a mask and a cap. It would be fine if no one recognized her. But if someone did, she would appear to be deliberately hiding something. Therefore, some people believed firmly without a doubt that this was definitely a celebrity who was deliberately covering her face. As a result, many more people suddenly crowded around her. All of them were shouting, "Are you Lin Che? Are you Lin Che?" Lin Che wanted to shout and say that she was not Lin Che. However, it would be of no use. The people who were shouting would still shout and the people who were crowding around her would still do the same. Some people even started to take photographs with their handphones. Lin Che rushed to stop them. "Don't take photos. Don't take photos." However, everyone became even more interested when they saw that there was unexpectedly a very tall and well-built man beside Lin Che who even had a child with him. Why was there a man beside Lin Che? Was this not an explosive piece of gossip news? More and more people started to take photographs. Seeing the situation, Gu Jingze immediately went in front of Lin Che to block her. He looked coldly at the people surrounding them. "All of you, move aside." His voice was not loud. However, because his tone was too cutting, the noisy crowd around them immediately heard his words clearly. Several people were instinctively shaken by his powerful voice. They looked up at this man in surprise. Some of them could not help but move aside to give the family of three some space. Gu Jingze protected Lin Che with one arm and his child with the other and slowly walked out. Everyone watched in slight surprise. They were slightly regretful that they had not managed to get a good picture of Lin Che. It was also a pity that they had not gotten to shake her hand and ask for her signature or something. However, people already started to discuss among themselves as well. Who was that earlier? Is he Lin Che's boyfriend? Wow, he's so handsome. They're a good-looking pair. It's just good to be a celebrity. You get to court such a handsome man. That's enough. You yourself have to look good first in order to be a celebrity and to court a handsome man. They are a good-looking pair. It has nothing to do with being a celebrity. This is a world that judges by appearances, understand? But I even saw a little boy with that man. Wow, it's not Lin Che's child, right? Now, they were in trouble. Lin Che took only a few steps before she saw Gu Jingze's bodyguards rushing towards them on his instructions. She sat in the car with a troubled expression. Gu Jingze hastily pulled Lin Che and examined her. "They didn't touch you, right?" Lin Che quickly shook her head. How could she be thinking about that now? However, she did not feel pain anywhere on her body, so they probably had not touched her. Lin Che said, "I'm in so much trouble now." Gu Xinian leisurely fiddled with his own fingers. His small and plump hands looked extremely nimble. This is what they call the evil we bring on ourselves. Get lost. Gu Jingze said, "Nothing will happen. Don't worry." However, shortly after he finished speaking, Yu Minmin's call came. Lin Che subconsciously had a sense of foreboding. She picked up her handphone and thought to herself that it was no coincidence that Yu Minmin was calling her now. As expected, once she picked up the call, Yu Minmin immediately started reprimanding her. "Lin Che, what are you doing? Why are there photos of you going to the amusement park? And even Gu Jingze is in the photos. Are you trying to expose yourself?" Lin Che wanted to cry but no tears came out. "I was wrong. Big sister, save me, quick." Yu Minmin was truly about to die from anger. Rubbish. People already released the photos. What can I do? Lin Che quickly told Gu Jingze to send her to the company. Yu Minmin swiftly pulled out some pictures uploaded by the netizens. They didn't take full frontal pictures, but they managed to take some blurry photos. As for you, they didn't take full frontal pictures of you as well because you disguised yourself quite well. However, the netizens are saying that it was you. Lin Che even saw the uploader caption the photo with, "I bumped into Lin Che and a handsome man having fun at the amusement park. They even had a child with them. What is happening?" Someone even said, "Did Lin Che get a boyfriend during the few years she disappeared? He's so handsome, extraordinarily handsome. I wonder if he's a celebrity or a wealthy businessman. He's so handsome, he's going to kill people with his charm." Yu Minmin said, "Fortunately, none of them are cursing you out. All of them have probably been shocked by your husband's good looks. They haven't had the time to think of how to criticize you. Lin Che covered her face and sat there with a completely crestfallen expression. I didn't expect people to start paying attention to me when I haven't even formally made my comeback yet. Yu Minmin said, who told you to go to a place as crowded as an amusement park? You don't know if you might bump into someone who regularly reads the online news. Nearly 100,000 people have reposted and left comments on your Weibo post. How could you be certain that none of the people who left those comments would happen to see you at the amusement park? The world is very small, alright. Lin Che asked, then what should I do now? I hope the media didn't notice our company's internet department discovered this when they looked up your name. However, just then, someone from the internet department came again. Sister Yu, we just looked it up. Lin Che's photos have all been deleted. Deleted? Yu Minmin asked in surprise, what happened? They've just been deleted. We can no longer find those people who uploaded the photos earlier. It seems like someone did it. All the photos online relating to this incident were deleted. Some people and topics have also been censored. Yu Minmin merely pondered for a bit before making sense of it. Gu Jingze. It was probably Gu Jingze's doing. Otherwise, how could the photos be taken off so quickly? Lin Che heaved a sigh of relief. Dear me, thankfully. Yu Minmin said, yes. Luckily, you have a capable husband. You will save so much trouble by looking for such a husband. Lin Che said, it doesn't matter for me. But I'm afraid that Nianian and Gu Jingze's photos will be revealed. Gu Jingze has not shown himself for so many years. All the photos of him online are always deleted immediately. This time will be no exception either. Yu Minmin heaved a sigh of relief as well. However, several people had already saved a few photos. Peng Yu looked at the slightly blurry photos and wondered, who is that? Chapter 820. All wealthy businessmen are so fat that oil leaks from them. The staff hastily said, today, people on the internet have been spreading rumors that this is Lin Che's boyfriend. Hearing this, Peng Yu suddenly beamed. Lin Che has a boyfriend. Didn't they all say that she had married a wealthy businessman? The staff replied, this is a rumor. No one said that this is her boyfriend. It's a photograph taken by netizens who saw the three of them playing at an amusement park. The main thing is that one of the three people was a child. The netizens are all speculating whether this is Lin Che's child. After hearing this, Peng Yu looked at the photograph more carefully. Sure enough, the man was pulling a child behind him. The child's face could not be seen clearly either, but it was clear that the child was quite young. Peng Yu immediately asked, do you mean to say that Lin Che even has a child? This was really a big piece of news. Female celebrities who had children out of nowhere were definitely not very popular. But was this the child she had with this man? Was this man the wealthy businessman whom she was rumored to have married? She saw that the man was dressed in a snug white V-neck tee with some black lining along the collar. He looked very casual. Below, he wore a loose pair of slacks and looked very leisurely. He seemed very tall. However, only his side profile was visible, and even then, it was slightly blurred. The quality of the photograph was not good. Still, she could tell that he was probably a very handsome man. His face looked very handsome even like this. The contours of his face were completely perfect. It looked like an extremely pleasant face. If he had looked into the camera squarely, his front profile would definitely be very good looking. It was just a pity that the photograph was not clear enough. Peng Yu laughed. It's impossible for this man to be some wealthy businessman. All businessmen have beer bellies and are greasy. How could such a handsome wealthy businessman exist? The staff said, precisely. You're right. Peng Yu said in a sinister tone, if this child really is Lin Che's child, then this man isn't necessarily the child's father. Maybe he's the bodyguard or driver of some wealthy businessman. Look at how intimate she's being with this man, humph. Perhaps they're having an affair. Peng Yu became even more excited as she spoke. It would definitely be good if it was an affair. When it is eventually exposed, she will get criticized severely. Naturally, everyone immediately understood what Peng Yu meant. However, they did not know how to break the news to Peng Yu. Seeing that Peng Yu had been thinking about it for such a long time, the staff hastily said, but I only saved a few of these photographs. The rest have been deleted. What? Peng Yu asked in surprise, how did that happen? It must be because Lin Che got someone to delete everything. I don't know how Lin Che has such power. The moment the photos were uploaded, they were deleted. Right now, all keywords including Lin Che, her child, or her boyfriend, have been completely blocked from websites. As long as the keyword has something to do with Lin Che and her boyfriend or her child, no results will appear at all. Without a certain level of power, this would definitely be impossible. Peng Yu was so angry that she stood there for some time with her teeth clenched before saying, "Humph. Seriously, in that case, I want to know what else you're hiding. Are you going to block other news too?" After saying this, she immediately threw a tantrum at her own staff opposite her and said, "Look at how efficient they are. Now, look at yourselves. The news I had talked about before this still hasn't spread. Go and spread it right now." Her staff were shocked and hastily went off to do their work. Lin Che was still looking at the news in the company. She had just found out that news about her had finally been deleted and it seemed that the news had been completely blocked and no one would know. Only then did she let out a breath of relief. But Yu Minmin herself had privately saved some of the photos. She looked at them and smiled. She said, "You're really amazing. You made Gu Jingze bring your child to the amusement park. Didn't he get surrounded by people there? The moment people see such a handsome and loving father and son pair, they would not be able to help themselves from looking at them." Lin Che glared at her in disbelief. However, they had indeed been looked at a lot. Yu Minmin said, "But your child is really very photogenic. Handing him over to our company to nurture is an option too. If your husband agrees." "Of course not. He has even met the company's shareholders. Even if Gu Jingze agrees, the rest of the Gu family won't agree either." Yu Minmin squeezed her cheeks together slightly. "What a pity. I see a person who is worth nurturing but I can't reach him. Otherwise, trained celebrities are all the rage now. If you leave him with us, he won't grow up to be ugly either. He will definitely be one of the most handsome men. He's so suited to be trained. Forget it. The more I talk about it, the more I want to do it. I won't say any more." Just then, she was scrolling through her Weibo and suddenly saw a post. It was a Weibo post uploaded by an individual, claiming to expose Lin Che. Lin Che just announced that she was going to make a comeback and immediately stole a role from a newbie. "I heard that when she met the director, she was late and was even particularly arrogant. She said bluntly that she was definitely better than the newbie, had more influence, and even had many fans. Initially, the newbie was already about to sign the contract but she was still pushed aside. I really don't know how a celebrity with such bad character can even return and make a comeback. Her reputation was so bad, to begin with. She stopped acting to marry a wealthy businessman and is still so arrogant now that she's back. Does she think we lack celebrities? She comes back when she wants to and leaves when she wants to. She's such a low-class and untrustworthy person. Why doesn't she just get out of the entertainment industry?" Lin Che said, "Ha! I snatched a newbie's role. It even says that I was late. What the hell?" In no time, the news became a hot topic. Yu Minmin quickly looked over as well. When she saw the post, she frowned and asked, "Who is deliberately giving you a bad name?" Lin Che said, "I don't know how many people feel disgruntled at the fact that I'm back. There must be numerous people wanting to ruin my reputation." Just as expected, the news immediately triggered a series of chain reactions. Someone dug out old news that Lin Che had stolen Mu Farron's role in a movie back then when she went to act in Hollywood. Everyone had already said back then that Lin Che's acting skills were not the best but she still insisted on taking up the role. It had not been long since then but she had stolen a newbie's role again. Several of Lin Che's fans were unwilling to admit defeat and rebutted the allegations. They argued that Lin Che had not stolen any role. The newbie had said that she was about to sign a contract, which meant that she had not signed it yet. Since she had not signed it, the director had the right to choose. Our Lin Che is beautiful and is even good at acting. There's no reason not to choose her. When it comes to influencing, our Lin Che is indeed better. Even with his eyes closed, the director would probably choose Lin Che. However, this was immediately rebutted. Someone commented that Lin Che had left the entertainment industry for such a long time. Who knew if her acting skills had already gotten so rusty to the point that she had forgotten how to act? Everyone was arguing on the internet about whether Lin Che was qualified for the role and whether the newbie or Lin Che was the better choice. Lin Che looked at the comments and said in a confused tone, "Who has nothing better to do than spread negative news about my bad character and poor acting skills?" Yu Minmin replied, "Who knows? Seriously, why would anyone spread such news now? Did she come up with this idea after seeing that your previous photos were deleted?" Lin Che looked at Yu Minmin. "When you put it like this, someone comes to my mind." "Who?" "Peng Yu."